I often see startups will rush to have a sales plan. They rush to gain momentum through that sales plan. And it's important, but it's just as important to have a marketing strategy and a plan. The strategy creates the framing for how the company will connect with external stakeholders, especially at scale. And where sales is often included in pointed one-to-one interactions, marketing helps you to communicate that message in a one-to-many format. So it's really important that as companies think about the path to product market fit, they consider how to create that marketing strategy and marketing plan alongside it.
Hello and welcome to the Emerge Product Market Fit Academy series, where we're joined by leading operators and founders in EdTech to share practical insights and advice for early stage founders. If you're building the future of learning and work, then this is for you. I'm Zara, and I'm joined by our venture partner and guest today, Natasha Davidson, one of the most experienced and accomplished marketers in EdTech. As Vice President of Global Marketing at Blackboard, she led a team of 40 marketers, orchestrating strategies across diverse business lines and regions. Most recently, she was the EMEA Region Chief Marketing Officer for Coursera, where she spearheaded growth initiatives spanning the enterprise, degrees, and consumer segments. As a first-generation university graduate, she is driven by the transformative impact of education and is excited about the role of EdTech on shaping the world of learning and work. As a venture partner within the Emerge community, Natasha has swiftly become an invaluable asset to our founders, mentoring them on the most effective marketing strategies in EdTech, which Natasha and I are excited to share with you in this episode. Hi, Natasha. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Today, we have an exciting lineup of 3 key topics to discuss, focused on marketing in EdTech. Firstly, we'll cover finding your first customers, why marketing is so important at the early stage, and how to use it to attract your first customers. Secondly, we'll talk about how to measure your marketing progress. And thirdly, we'll talk about go-to-market strategies to differentiate EdTech products. Now, Product Market Fit Academy is built to support early stage founders in their path to product market fit. So to kick us off, Natasha, could you talk about the role of marketing in product market fit and the importance of a marketing strategy at the early stages of building a startup?
Yes, marketing is essential in product market fit. It really informs the brand narrative. It helps to craft the marketing messaging. In other words, it helps you frame the external articulation of why your company or product exists and the benefit it provides to the target market. So when a company is out testing for product market fit, the feedback and signals from potential customers are essential for the development and refinement of the marketing messaging. I often see that startups will rush to have a sales plan. They rush to gain momentum through that sales plan. And it's important, but it's just as important to have a marketing strategy and a plan. The strategy creates the framing, as I said, for how the company will connect with external stakeholders, especially at scale. And where sales is often included in pointed one-to-one interactions, marketing helps you to communicate that message in a one-to-many format. So it's really important that as companies think about the path to product market fit, they consider how to create that marketing strategy and marketing plan alongside it.
Thanks for sharing how important marketing is in those early stages. It's really interesting to see how marketing not only communicates the brand, but also serves as a feedback loop for refining the product alignment with market needs. You underscored a really valuable point about the dichotomy of sales versus marketing, this personal versus scalable. So in light of that, do you have any specific tools or frameworks that founders can lean on to effectively craft their marketing plan in the early stages?
One of the frameworks that I've used in the past is what I call the marketing plan on a page. And this is a way to really articulate everything you want to do around your marketing your product on one simple page. And it starts with a business objective. So what are the sales or revenue targets that the company might have for its product? It then moves into the marketing objectives and priorities. And this is how you're going to support the business objectives through particular activities. The next step is creating a list of key marketing tactics. Those tactics would then be aligned to the marketing priorities, which are aligned to the business objectives. It's also important to think about what the dependencies and risks are with trying to execute those marketing tactics, as well as what metrics you might want to use to measure if your marketing activity or marketing tactics are successful or not. Forrester has a really good template, literally called a marketing plan on a page. You can Google it to find it on their site. I've used this and modified it in the past, and it's been quite effective also in helping to create a bridge between marketing and sales on teams.
Thank you, Natasha. The marketing plan on a page sounds like an incredibly strategic tool. And building on that, one of the biggest challenges that early stage startups face is proving that value and earning trust in a competitive landscape before they build a reputation. So, how can startups effectively identify and attract early customers, especially when that crucial proof of success is often a decisive factor for many prospects?
That is a tough one, right? It's sometimes quite challenging to figure out how are you going to articulate the true impact of your product or your offer when you don't yet have the proof of outcome. I'd say that driving trials and demos are very common and trying to do that in a way that is as low cost, right, and low lift as possible. Offering to host diagnostic clinics or assessments allow you to showcase the product, even if you don't yet have the proof of what the outcome or the change might be for the customer. And I'd say that for any customers that have chosen to trial or pilot your product, even if you haven't gotten to the point where you have outcomes yet, creating testimonials that speak to why that customer decided to trial or pilot with you can often help you in creating additional momentum to gain more customers for trial. So talking about why they chose you first instead of talking about the outcomes that you don't yet have can be helpful to mitigate the absence of having proof points from those early customers.
Super helpful, those tactics and strategies. I'm particularly interested in delving deeper into the power of the testimonials that you mentioned and the authentic narratives in marketing. In what ways can customer stories really be harnessed as powerful tools to acquire additional customers? When you've been working with your first few customers, perhaps in those free trials, how do you turn those into really powerful customer stories?
I'd say the first thing to keep in mind is that attention spans are shorter and shorter these days, especially in the buying cycle. Customers have a lot of information coming at them. Even when they go to search for particular solutions, they have so much that they have to filter through. So keeping the customer story quite short, concise, dynamic is really important. Video testimonials is one way to do that, whether they are short video clips or even audio clips. Having one or two sentences that really speak to that impact that the customer expects or that they felt early on, even in the trial, is really important. And I'd say also visually appealing graphics are a good way to showcase through pictures, through short words, what it is that your product is about and also the customer experience so far. So again, short video or audio clips, keeping the content dynamic. Remember that customer attention spans are really short and think about as many visually appealing graphics and images that you can use to describe the customer experience.
As you said, the power of concise, dynamic content really can't be overstated in today's fast paced digital landscape, especially when new formats like TikTok has seen this unprecedented impact. Just yesterday, I was walking in a shopping mall in Singapore and I walked into a Uniqlo physical store and they were showing a TikTok video that went viral demonstrating one of their bags. Building on that, I'd love to know what strategies or frameworks that you personally employed to craft these compelling customer stories that resonate with a target demographic and maybe in your time at Blackboard or Coursera?
The first thing that we've done in both companies is you get out there and you talk to the customer. The first thing you want to do is just interview them, understand what's their experience with the product or the offering so far? What pain points did they have when they started the relationship with us, and how have those pain points been closed, right, or overcome by way of using the product or the offering? And just in that conversation, you can glean some really interesting insights, tidbits that you can then use for content. Sometimes you might want to create longer form content. You might even want to partner with one of your customers to create perhaps a thought piece, maybe a longer type of paper or asset that you can use across multiple channels. And we've done that as well in the different companies that I've worked for is working with customers to say, would you partner with us to create a mini case study, a mini thought piece? Would you mind being featured as a guest speaker on a webinar or on a panel at a conference that we're hosting? And all of those touch points, all of those ways that you bring that customer story alive, you can turn into content. You can turn it into those short video or audio clips that I mentioned. You can turn it into an ebook, for example. You can actually turn it into small posts or do a series of posts on LinkedIn or other social media channels. But I would say just don't underestimate that every single interaction that you have with your customers can turn into pieces of content that you can then use to attract more customers or to reinforce the messaging that you already have out in the market.
Really helpful. Getting out there and talking to customers and thinking about your touch points with them as opportunities to share the customer love while you learn more about their experience. Fantastic. Moving from the content creation side to our second topic of today, measuring its impact. There's an intriguing challenge that many founders face, especially in the B2B space, where the results of your marketing efforts might take a while to actually manifest and see. So, in your experience, what key metrics or KPIs should startups prioritize to gauge the success of their marketing impact or efforts?
I'd say the most important metric is marketing's contribution to sales pipeline, especially if you're in the B2B environment. It's critical, though, for companies to align really early on what is the definition of marketing contribution. I have seen many different definitions, and that has sometimes become a sore spot between marketing and sales because there are so many different opinions on this. But in general, it's important to look at what do you expect marketing to do in terms of impact to the sales funnel, and where do you expect that impact to happen? Are you more interested in having marketing bring in qualified leads to the top of the funnel? Or do you want marketing to also help with conversion of those leads across the funnel to the point where then sales actually starts to take over and close those deals? So having that alignment on what marketing contribution to sales pipeline means is really important. And then I'd say that the quality of leads, the conversion of those leads across the funnel, the cost of those leads. So how much marketing budget does it take you to bring in a quality lead are all really important metrics to take a look at. There are other metrics that will vary by tactic and by channel. So for example, your website, it's a very critical element of your marketing action plan. In many instances, it can be called your digital business card, right? It is your face of your company when you don't have someone that is speaking to the customer live. So you will want to be concerned with traffic to the site. You also want to be concerned with how long they might be staying on the site, how long they stay on one page before they exit. In other words, the bounce rate. You want to know how many pages they visit. You want to know, do they complete the contact us form, which is really your ultimate goal when you have visitors coming to your site. You want them to signal to you that they want to engage more. Are they downloading specific assets that you have on your site as well? So website downloads might also be a metric that you care about to determine if the content on your site is actually meaningful enough for them to engage. And so I'd say that using that website example, all of those metrics will speak to the quality and the clarity of content that you have on the site, as well as the ease of navigation. There's a tool that is free to use that you can deploy to determine the effectiveness of your website as one particular aspect of your marketing plan. It's called Similar Web. It's a free tool. Founders can use it to get an initial gauge on the effectiveness of their site. And I would say that having an understanding of how your website is doing is an important element of your marketing plan and also an element of the types of metrics that you might want to measure to determine if your message is landing well with your prospects and your customers.
Sounds like an incredibly useful tool. That just goes to show the depth and breadth of what founders need to focus and align on, looking at that pipeline from marketing to sales, and the importance of being on the same page in terms of expected impact. And super clear how monitoring these metrics and understanding their implications can guide a startup's marketing decision. But there are instances where, even after meticulous planning, things don't go as expected, as planned for, and that leads to reconsiderations in strategy. So this brings me to my next topic that many edtech founders grapple with on their journey to finding product market fit, the marketing pivot. Could you talk a little bit about what exactly a marketing pivot is, how frequently you see startups encounter the need for one, and when would the optimal time to be reconsidering and adapting your marketing strategies in light of market feedback?
Sure. So, a marketing pivot is when you decide that one direction or plan of action that you've taken with your marketing activities isn't working and you want to change course. Maybe you want to either stop that particular action and really take a different direction, or maybe you want to lighten up on the investment and put that investment into something else. And so, I'd say that in many B2B businesses, marketing actions taken in Q1, they might not show any return until the next quarter. And that is sometimes surprising for sales teams to understand that I launched something today. Why don't I see an impact or movement in 1 to 2 weeks? And the reason that it takes longer is because there are many more interactions and touch points before a buyer will show interest or be ready to take the next step in the sales cycle. And sometimes what helps is to tie these marketing tactics together in a campaign or a program. So have a series of marketing actions that are connected, that are designed to move that buyer along the journey and really inspire or motivate them to take that next step in the sales cycle. Keep in mind, the longer the sales cycle, sometimes the longer it takes for marketing actions to show a return. But that doesn't mean that we can't look for early signals to determine if actions are actually doing what we want them to do. So I'd say the team should experiment. They should look for feedback signals as early as they can. And once you identify those activities that you deploy, figure out what the target metrics are and what you define as success. Then set a cadence for reviewing those metrics at least weekly. I'd say that if you're deploying activities on social media, for example, whether that's LinkedIn, in the case of B2B, or it could be Instagram for B2C, you'll know usually within your first week or two if you're actually gaining that traction or gaining the engagement of your target audience. And then you can decide if you want to continue in that manner, especially if you're using paid media to support those activities, or if you want to try something else. So, as an example, maybe you run a paid media campaign whereby you're advertising on LinkedIn, you're running Google ads, maybe you're paying for ads in a digital publication as well. You can generally tell within those first 2 to 3 weeks if you're getting the traction that you want or if you're getting the downloads of a particular content piece. And then you can make a decision right away if you want to divert your money away from one of those platforms to another. Conversely, if your tactic is to spend money because you want to host an event or set up a booth at a conference, it could take you months before you know if that conference is actually a worthwhile use of marketing investment. And that's because the customer or the prospect that comes to that conference, they might just be in those initial phases of their search for a solution. And they'll want additional conversations. They may want an additional trial or demo to determine if they want to move forward. And so it can take a little bit more time to determine if that was the right use of marketing money. So pivots can be quite different depending on the tactic, but it's really important to align on what those metrics are, what you expect from them, and then set a plan to monitor those metrics as regularly as you can to determine if you need to make a change.
Really helpful. A follow-up question on that. You talked about when you sometimes have this delayed results from when you launch a marketing campaign, especially in the case of B2B, that could be a quarter or longer. You should look for early signals. What are those kind of early signals when you're waiting on results, perhaps for the next quarter?
I'd say the early signals can be looking at additional tactics that you've run alongside this larger tactic. And this is why I'd say that it's important to tie tactics together into a marketing program or a marketing campaign. So I would not advise companies to say, we're just going to create a few posts on social media and we're not going to do anything else. It's really important to have multiple elements of your marketing plan or actioning at the same time. And that way you can start to determine, am I getting traction because I have made a post or I've posted an article on my company's LinkedIn page. I've diverted them to the website, and now I can see if there's any activity on the website. And sometimes that means taking a look at how many visits, how much engagement have you had on the site? How many downloads have you had of a particular asset? Again, similar web is a great way to determine what is that engagement on your site? Are people really attaching themselves to your content? Are they showing interest in the messaging that you have on your site? So I'd say web traffic can be a really good early indicator. Social media engagement, as long as you are active and regularly posting on social media. If you do have a business development team, so maybe you have business development representatives or lead development representatives, they can also give you really early signals as to whether your marketing activities are working because they can test out with those prospects specific messages, specific assets. They can ask where have they heard about the company or about the product. And that can give you some early signals as to whether the things you're putting out there are actually starting to stick.
That's a great tip on having the multiple elements of your marketing plan in each campaign so you can compare those early signals and review them often, ideally weekly. And the nuance you provided on those dynamics of the B2B marketing, the intricacies of feedback cycles, making informed pivots, all super helpful. And it shows really this careful calibration that startups need to strike between having patience, but also being very agile and responsive to feedback. As we segue into our final discussion point for today, would love to touch on the broader landscape of go-to-market strategies. So, in this competitive sector of edtech, how can startups really amplify their discoverability and truly distinguish themselves from the myriad competitors?
I would say that it's first, again, back to some of the principles of product market fit, right? Do you understand who the customer profile is that you're going after? Who's your target market? And what problem are you trying to solve for that market? Because marketing is the amplification of those early decisions that you make around product market fit, around the problem, the persona, the proposition, and the product, of course. So I'd say that's really your first step, right? Really making sure that you have that clarity. And it does take testing. It's an iterative process. But as you get those initial signs of clarity, then that's actually how you start to inform your go-to-market strategy, at least from a marketing perspective. I'd say that the really important element for a startup is to think through the building blocks of brand strategy. So, what are the values? What's your purpose? What's your mission? What's your vision for your product? What is that value proposition? What's the identity and the tone that you want to strike? All of these things allow you to create a unique positioning in the market as long as you have thoughts very clearly about who the customer is and what problems you're trying to solve for them. And I'd say that it's important to be authentic as well as understanding how you differentiate yourself from the competition.
Absolutely. Customers can really tell on the authenticity side, and that's the power of testimonials and seeing other customers who love your product. I'd be interested to know a little bit more about how you see the differences between the sales focused and marketing focused go to market strategies.
I'd say that a marketing focused go to market strategy, it is about creating this share, right? The space in the mind of the customer that your product is the preferred product or the preferred service. So when they think about this problem that they need to solve, they think about your product, your offering first and foremost above the competition. And you're trying to do that at scale. So you're trying to think about what are these messages that showcase who we are as a company, that we clearly understand the problems that our target market is facing and that we have the solution, that we are the preferred solution. And if that's done well, hopefully you then have this pool of potential customers that you can start to nurture and engage with. A sales focused go to market strategy is focused really on getting those individuals to go through that sales journey. And it's really focused, I'd say, again, on that one-to-one interaction where the salesperson is trying to showcase the very detailed elements of how this particular product is going to solve this customer or this prospect's needs. There's space for both, and they have to work in tandem with each other, right? So again, marketing being a more one to many and a set of activities that are driven at scale, they're often going to be at the forefront of talking about the company, talking about the brand, talking about the position in the marketplace, and creating this space for then sales to go in and have those very pointed conversations. So there definitely needs to be both in any organization, I'd say.
Given that difference in the sort of one to one versus one to many format, do you find that one is better suited for B2C versus B2B?
I don't know that one would be better than the other per se. I'd say that in the B2C space, marketing and sales really feel more merged into one. The lines are very blurred. In a B2B organization, there is a marketing group and there's a marketing engine and there's a sales engine. Whereas in B2C, I'd say that they're almost one and the same, right? In many instances, you spend a lot more time trying to get that individual consumer to make their decision to buy. Once they buy, that's your revenue, right? Whereas in B2B space, you have marketing really trying to position the company and trying to get individuals to think that this is my preferred partner. And then once they say, yes, I actually do want to do business with you, there's still sometimes a long tail of negotiation and iteration on the sales side to get that customer or that prospect to really say yes and to sign. And that's where the revenue comes in, right? So this element of building that momentum towards revenue can take a lot longer in a B2B space than in a B2C space.
And how can founders effectively balance and leverage inbound versus outbound marketing approaches?
You definitely need both. It's important to have both inbound and outbound. Your inbound is often a reflection of, again, the messaging that you've put out there, building up of your brand positioning and brand presence across different platforms and different channels. As people start to see you and engage with you by way of receiving your messaging or even working their way through your site and working their way through any assets that you might provide, then they come to you, right? And really trying to draw those customers in is really the essence of inbound marketing versus outbound is really oftentimes an element of having a lead development team or a business development team as well, where they're cold calling, they're prospecting, they're going out there and knocking on doors per se to get our company, our product, our offering in front of those customers. I'd say that the share of investment between inbound versus outbound will depend on how mature your company is and how mature your messaging and how confident you feel actually in your product market fit. Versus if you're still starting out, you might want to create an over index in some instances on that outbound versus inbound so that you can really get out there and continue testing, continue iterating so that you refine your messaging, you refine your positioning, which then creates the momentum for inbound.
Absolutely. Being very intentional about where you invest your time and resources, particularly given the stage that you're at, is incredibly important. Do you have advice for founders when it comes to allocating resources? What factors they should consider when they decide where to invest their time and money into, such as SEO, website optimization, or other channels?
Yes, I'd say it's important to do a little bit of research to understand how long it takes to see the benefit and see the return on those investments. So, for example, SEO can actually take up to a year or longer for you to really see those benefits. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't start. It means you should think about what are the building blocks to having an effective SEO strategy. And one of the critical building blocks is optimizing your website. So before you go out and spend money per se on working with an agency for SEO, it's probably a better use of your investment to spend on website optimization. It's really thinking about what content do I have on my site? How is that content connected to the keywords that people might be using to search for a solution like mine? Is my site easy to navigate? Is it engaging? Does it motivate and drive people to fill out that contact us form, which is, again, one of the most important elements of the site when you're trying to gain traction. Another place that you might want to invest some resources, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but investing resources in building your presence across other digital marketing channels. If you're in B2B, you do need to spend time creating a good presence on LinkedIn and ensuring that you're engaging with the variety of customers and prospects that might be there. Versus if you're a B2C company, maybe it's Instagram or maybe it's even TikTok, and spending some time building content that performs well on those channels. But I'd say that it's important to think through, where are you today? So doing that assessment of what it is that you have at your disposal and what your assets look like today, and then determining where you should invest to get those returns. But SEO is one that I'd say you should probably put a little bit later on the list, but think about the building blocks that get you to an effective SEO strategy.
That's an excellent point on being very conscious of the timeline to seeing impact and being intentional about which strategies you pursue in which order to build on their cascading impact. The example of optimizing the website before you jump into SEO. Really helpful. Interested in what are the most effective methods that you've seen for founders to really increase their startup's discoverability at point zero when they're really starting out and they've built this really great product? How can they get the word out effectively and increase that discoverability to stand out in a crowded market?
So again, because so many buyers spend time online, right? They spend time searching for potential solutions online as well as talking to peers. It really is important to try to create an initial online presence. So again, that's looking at, what are the channels, where are the spaces that your target market most hang out? Is it LinkedIn? Is it partnering with a potential publication so that you can actually start to build some content that is co-sponsored or co-authored that you can get in front of your target market? Having a website is really important, and having a website that is clear. It is unfortunately often that I see that you go to a startup site and on that first page, it's not very clear what problem they're solving, who they're talking to, what type of solutions that they are actually bringing to bear. And you have to spend a lot more time navigating the site to understand that. I would say don't underestimate the true value of having a super clear landing page for your site, as well as a really good presence on the digital channels that your target market actually consumes. And don't underestimate the power of your own network, right? So as you're trying to increase your visibility and discoverability, tap into your network and have them help you spread the word. It's also important to talk to customers again, or to talk to prospects, I should say. Do some of those interviews. At the end of those interviews, ask, is there anyone else you would recommend that I talk to showcase this solution, to showcase this product? And that can also create this sort of mini viral effect, if you will, by creating a stronger word of mouth for your solution.
Really helpful. So making sure your messaging is clear, not underestimating the power of having a very clear landing page in terms of the value you provide, the problem you're addressing, and meeting your customers where they are, really being on those digital channels, being present where your target market is. Very helpful. So before we wrap up, I would love to jump into an example of how you've nailed down the messaging for marketing in either a company you've worked in or a company you've advised. Because a lot of founders struggle with properly defining and articulating the problem and the exact space that they fit into, which can lead to a little bit of a convoluted marketing. How do you approach that?
Sure. I'll give an example of a founder that I chatted with recently, and they had gone through the experience of getting their funding. They think they've defined what their company is, but found that they're going in circles in conversations and still not quite landing some of those further conversations that they want to land. So I offered to take a quick look through some of their materials, the website, some of their sales materials as well. And what I found was that there's clarity on how the solution works and all the different things that the solution can do. But what wasn't so clear is the actual problem the solution is designed to solve, and even clarity on the specific type of customer that has this type of problem that would be most suited for this particular solution. And maybe that is a common challenge when you have this great product that can do lots of different things and maybe can solve multiple different types of problems that a customer might have. But it's really important to pick and to really clearly articulate what is the pain point that is most pressing and for whom and to whom. And so what I've recommended is what's called a market positioning grid. And it's a template that has 7 boxes, and each box is a question. And the first question, as one might guess, is who is the target customer? Who specifically do we ultimately want to buy this particular product? Can be lots of influencers, but who's the actual buyer decision maker that will, sign on the dotted line to purchase the product? That's the first starting point. What's their problem? What is the main problem, the pain point? What do they care most about? What keeps them up at night, to use that cliched question? Really spending time thinking about what is that customer's problem is going to be so critical. What's the market landscape? So in what space does this product particularly sit? And what I found with this founder is that the space, the category also wasn't so clear, which then probably created challenges in going around in circles, in having conversations that weren't progressing to the next stage. So really defining that market landscape. What's the solution, right? So we talked about the problem, we talked about the customer, we've talked about the market landscape. What is the solution? Now, in this particular founder example, the solution was pretty clear, right? It's very clear what the product is and how it works, but matching that description of the product such that it is the answer to the customer problem is where the work really lies. The next one is, what are the differentiators, right? So now, why is this particular product so different than the competition? Why is it unlike any other alternative that the customer could purchase? What really makes us different? What cannot be copied is another way to think about it. And on that topic of competition, who are the competitors? And sometimes you might hear founders say, we're new, we're making the market, we're creating the category, we don't have any competitors. Then the next question is, what's the alternative? So what are the possible alternatives that the target customer could actually use, or that they could build, right, or they could buy? And then lastly, what are the attributes of your product? So it can be similar to differentiators, but what is the unique space in the customer's mind that you want this product to occupy, such that they have to engage with you further? They have to go on to the next set of conversations. And so answering those questions can be really essential for the foundation of messaging and for fine-tuning messaging. And what I've suggested for this founder is that we go through this grid. And after we complete this grid, you then have all the components to create your value proposition statement, and to create that with even more clarity and with even more depth and with even more differentiation from the competition. So that's a concrete example, working with a founder, and hopefully using this will really make a difference for how they continue in their go-to-market journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It takes restraint when you're so excited about all the different things that your product can do to hone it down for the sake of that marketing clarity, not trying to be so many things to so many people. But it's really important to be able to match your solution in the end to the precise pain point of your exact customer. And then to truly, as you put it, occupy that space in the customer's mind. So incredibly helpful. Thank you, Natasha. Let's move into the final part of the session, our quick fire round.
Okay.
Let's do it. If you could pick one, what is the best customer acquisition channel for early stage edtech startups? So one for B2B, one for B2C.
It still has to be an online channel in my mind, because there's so much that still happens in the online space. So for B2B, LinkedIn. Doesn't have to be paid. It can be organic customer acquisition through LinkedIn. And I'd say for B2C, it depends on the demographic. Instagram, or TikTok.
What is the most effective question for a founder to ask when making their first marketing hire, and why?
One of the most effective questions to ask a marketing hire, aside from why would you want to work for our company, it would be to ask that hire to give examples of how they have built a marketing strategy and executed on that. And when do they know to pivot those marketing activities to try something else? It's really important because founders and startups need individuals that are agile, that can think very quickly, that can move quickly, but also have a bias for driving results. So thinking about the right types of activities, the right types of actions to take, and then the agility to know when to pivot.
What's the best Coursera course you've ever taken?
I'd say one of the most memorable ones is learning how to learn, which is just fascinating, and how we think about learning, why we procrastinate, why we get stuck in our learning journeys, and how to get unstuck. A pretty fascinating course.
Love that. And final question, what emerging trends or technologies do you believe will have the biggest impact on the future of education?
Oh, maybe it's predictable, but I will say the rapid arrival of AI and generative AI. I don't think that the impact is negative per se. I'd say that it does require responsible action, right? Responsible monitoring. There's so many amazing developments that have already come to light in education thanks to AI, also in the future of work conversations, thanks to AI. But I do think that it requires responsible monitoring. It requires ongoing dialogue. And I'd say it probably requires alignment around the taxonomy of how it's used, what it's used to do, and what it's used for in terms of how it drives impact, right? And how it supplements the learning journey for companies and individuals.
Completely agree. And it's a topic we could do a full length episode on another time. But thank you so much for joining us, Natasha. You shared some really incredible marketing insights that I know will be really helpful to early stage edtech founders.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to the Emerge Product Market Fit Academy. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it, follow our channel, and if you're feeling generous, share it with a friend.